aims to bring collaboration among researchers and educators in teaching English as a second language or as an additional language. And so we hold these webinars to bring people together and to be able to have opportunities for discussion. We also have some past webinars that are available on our website for those that want to go check it out. And this one will also be there once it's over, so people can always go back whenever. We would like to start this meeting today with a land acknowledgement. So for those who are maybe not in the Sherbrooke area, I'd invite you to share your own land acknowledgement in the chat so that we can take a moment to reflect. Bishop's University is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Abenaki people, and we acknowledge that we are settlers on this land, and we will continue to educate ourselves and work toward reconciliation. So I'll invite anyone to take a few seconds to reflect on what reconciliation means for them, and I'll also invite others to share their own land acknowledgements in the chat. So I'll leave a few seconds for that. So I can see that we have another land acknowledgement. We have someone that is from the traditional land of, I don't know if I'm going to attempt to pronounce it, but Keniakehaka Nation.
It's known today as Montreal.
Okay, perfect. So now that we've taken a moment to think about that, we can go into today's meeting. So for this webinar, we're actually bringing 3 different guest speakers together to discuss language-friendly schools, which might be a new concept to some, and maybe it's just revisiting something we already know for others. And so the Language Friendly Schools program aims to unlock student potential by creating a multilingual environment in which the school adapts to the students' linguistic needs rather than the opposite. There are now 11 countries that have embraced the Language Friendly School program. And today we have the opportunity to hear from one of the co-founders of Language Friendly Schools, Dr. Emmanuelle Le Pichon-Vorstman from the University of Toronto, who will be able to give us a bit more information about the overall values and mission of the program. We also have Marjorie Hewitt, who will be able to share her experience as the ESL program leader, who brought LFS to Glendale High School, which is a high school in Ontario. So we will be able to explore the perspective of implementing this type of program into a school. We also have Jacqueline Mallais, which is who is an ESL teacher and pedagogical consultant in Montreal. And so she will be able to lend a more local perspective on this program. I'll also let them introduce themselves a bit more later. This webinar will be structured a bit differently than usual. Rather than a presentation, we will have 3 short interviews with our guest speakers, about 10 minutes each. And at the end, we'll have a time for questions and discussions, and it'll be a bit less formal, so we can maybe go a bit deeper into these topics. some of you may have noticed this meeting is recorded. So if you do not want to have your face present, you are welcome to close the camera. But we also enjoy seeing people's smiles when we have these sort of discussions. So I'd also invite you to keep it open if you're comfortable. And if you have any questions during the interviews, just leave them in the chat and we'll be able to get back to them at the end. But that's about it for the overall discussion. So now we'll be able to get into the interviews themselves.
So we're going to start with Emmanuelle. I can't see anybody, but I'll just start with the question. Or actually, Emmanuelle, do you want to present yourself? Introduce yourself to everyone?
Okay. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Emmanuelle Le Pichon. I am an associate professor at the University of Toronto, Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. I'm based here already for 8 years, but almost 8 years. But before coming to Canada, I was a professor at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. As you can hear, I was born and raised in France, but love brought me to the Netherlands, and then further peregrinations brought us to Canada. So that's who I am.
It's nice to see you again. So our first question for you is, what are language-friendly schools?
So the Language Friendly School is a network of schools and a quality label. That's important to say. So it means that it is a network of schools that are linguistically and culturally inclusive. That's very important to say. It's also a response to the growing diversity in schools. So we have seen in the last, I would say, 15 years, a, a population of our schools that has changed drastically here in Canada, but also in Europe, where I was based before coming here. And if the population changes, then new challenges come with it, right? So these need to be addressed, and that's exactly why we started the Language Friendly School. What is very important for the Language Friendly School is that we see schools as meeting places, which means that they are places where students, parents, staff, and all of the people who are around the school from with their diverse backgrounds meet and are united to share and build up knowledge around the education of the students. So very often I hear teachers saying, this is my classroom. No, it's not their classroom. It's the classroom of the students, of the teachers, but it's also embedded into a community. And it's so important for each school to be able to form a community. And that can only happen if everybody feels welcomed, feels valued, and if teachers build on these and school stakeholders build on this richness to enhance this feeling of belonging to a community.
Thank you. I'll pass the mic to Em for the second question.
So for our second question, we would like to know what brought you to starting this initiative, and if it would be possible to share the story behind it.
Yes, of course. So I am a professor and a researcher, and as a researcher, I had the opportunity to go to travel a lot, to visit a lot of schools around the world, and in search for understanding the impact of linguistically and culturally inclusive pedagogies. And And while going around the world and meeting all of these schools and teachers, I've met remarkable teachers who were really willing to welcome their students with their rich repertoires of language and culture. But very often, um, teachers told me that they would do it secretly. They would fear the blame of their leadership or of their colleagues. They would literally say, when I do that, I close the door of my classroom because I don't want people to hear me do that. So it's very interesting because it reveals a huge misunderstanding and ideological divide around languages in schools, around what it is to learn a new language, around what it is to be taught in a language that is not your home language, around what multilingualism is, around what socialization is, and the role of language into that. And the result of it is that even if we have a great teacher or maybe two great teachers, they often feel discouraged. They feel isolated. They don't feel supported. And that was a big problem. The second aspect of it is that I am a mother of 4 children. And these children, you have heard me. I've traveled around a lot, and they came with me, which means that we lived in the Netherlands while my family was in France. So we went very often to France. We spent time in the US, almost 2 years. We eventually moved to Canada. And every time my 4 children had to switch from one language and from one curriculum to another one, which is not easy. It's really a transition that is difficult, and students need support during these transitions. And schools might be aware of this and do their best. But strangely enough, the students' abilities in their own languages are rarely considered, and their backgrounds are usually entirely ignored. It doesn't matter what they have done before, as long as they adapt to whatever is done in the school today. And that was really problematic to me. And then the third aspect is that one day, when my children were still small in the Netherlands, a teacher came to me and asked me not to speak French with my children anymore on school ground. And beware, French was a language that was taught in the school, so they should have been happy, right? No, they were not. And that experience was a life changer for me because I discovered emotions in me that I had never felt. All of a sudden, I was furious. I was so furious that I called my husband. I said, "You have to talk to them because I'm afraid I'm not going to be reasonable in that conversation." So I realized the impact on parents when they are asked not to speak their own language. I realized the impact on children when they feel that their languages are not valued. And you can't imagine the number of schools here in Canada or in the Netherlands or in France where children are punished for speaking a different language. Punished. And what is the consequence? It means that children don't want to invest in their learning anymore. It means that children and their families are silenced, are intimidated. And I can tell you from my personal experience, my own relationship with that particular school team never recovered. Never. Can you imagine? So that was my background. And my colleague, co-founder of the Language Friendly School, Ellen Rose Campbell, she's a lawyer. She's originally a lawyer of Indigenous women. And she comes from the perspective of languages as a right. And I came from the perspective from language as a resource for learning. And so together, we put that together and we had the Language Friendly School. Language as a right. All children and students have the right, and this is in the Convention of the Right for the Child, that every country is in the world has signed, except the US, to be taught in a language that they understand, right? That's a right. It's not an option, it's a right, right? Well, we know, we researchers, we know that if the children understand what they are taught, they learn better. They are also more motivated, right? So we know how important it is. And why did we invent a new concept, language friendliness? Because who wants to be language unfriendly? Nobody, right? So we discovered quite rapidly that translanguaging was a difficult concept, that people disagreed, people argued about it. But language friendliness, nobody argues about it. We all want to be language friendly, right? So,
Thank you. I mean, some good things can come from anger, and this is the proof. My third question is, what's the overall goal of language-friendly schools? What drives the initiative?
yeah, so that's a very good one. So the goal, as I was explaining at the beginning, is to support fantastic teachers, fantastic teams. That's our first goal. Our first goal was to put these teachers in touch with each other so that they could support each other. But what we discovered very soon is that a teacher alone, even though they might be extraordinary, they need the support of their leadership. So the language-friendly schools are schools who come with a team. The principal has to be on board. And because I told you my colleague has a law background, when schools come in, they sign a contract. So the principal signs a contract that his or her school is not going to punish children for speaking their own language, right? They sign that contract, and that's so important. So they come as a team. There is the principal, there is a language coordinator, and there are 2 or 3 teachers that are already on board. So we support schools in their excellence towards using linguistically and culturally inclusive pedagogy. That's the first goal. The second goal is to encourage the networking. So we believe in a domino effect. So this is for those who are very familiar with linguistically and culturally inclusive pedagogy. We know that once you start with it, you see the impact is so immediate on the school community, on your students. They are so happy with it that you can't stop. There is no, you cannot go back to what it was, right? And then because it has such an impact, everybody wants to that impact. So just to give you an example, we have, for instance, in the Netherlands, schools in refugee camps. It's not called that way in the Netherlands, but anyways, and those are schools where families who don't have an official status in the Netherlands yet have to school their children. And one of them became a language-friendly school, asked to become a language-friendly school. And they told us that a couple of months later, the other refugee schools came to them and asked, how do you do? Because your students have such a higher level than ours when they come out of that school. What is your secret? They were smiling because they knew it was the language friendliness. So that's the second goal, putting schools, excellent schools, in touch with each other so that they can share innovative and practices. And, you know, we very much believe in what Jim Cummins said already 20 years ago, that teachers are knowledge generators. So from the very moment they are supported, they create themselves their own pedagogy. They are incredibly creative. They just need the support of their leadership and of the researchers to be, you know, supported in what they do. So yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you. You mentioned a bit some of the schools that have embraced this sort of pedagogy and approach. How many language-friendly schools are there now, and how do schools become language-friendly?
Yes. So it's always evolving. At the moment, I believe we have 55 schools in the network. And the reason why it's always evolving, it's because schools are joining, I think one or two every week. And schools are also, you know, sometimes they're ready to go. They don't need to renew, although most of them renew. So when they sign a contract, they sign for 2 years with us, which means that you don't need to do a whole process to become a language friendly school. You just meet with us, you explain why you want to your school to become language friendly. The principal is there, shows that they are on board, and then after that you receive a contract. There is a fee that needs to be paid, and the fee depends on the type of schools. So of course, private schools have a higher fee than regular schools. The Language Friendly School is hosted by the Rutu Foundation, which is an NGO. So there are people working 24/7, or maybe not the five 5 days a week, for the Language Friendly Schools. So that's the reason. And then you receive a contract, you sign it, and right away you are a Language Friendly School. Right away, which means that there is no school that is the same as the other. We take the schools where they are when they come in, and then we help them to develop to where they want to be. So right away afterwards, we have a meeting of an hour with you, with your school, and then we are going to discuss your plan for the year and for the 2 years. And then we are going to meet twice a year, one-on-one, to see how you progress, what are your challenges, what are your needs, to reevaluate, reassess with you, and see whether you need support. Along the way, there are also network meetings organized, international network meetings with different topics. So it's the next one is going to be on Wednesday, for instance, on multilingual literacy and libraries. So we have discovered actually that multilingual, that librarians and libraries play a very important role in these schools. So that's really amazing. And then after 2 years, and there are lots of activities. So for instance, we organize conferences. So last year, the conference was organized at Glendale. Marjorie is here. She's going to, it's always in a school. Our conferences are always in a school because it's not top down at all. We don't tell schools what to do. They tell us what they want to do based on their own needs. And then we help them to develop as they want. And then after 2 years, we ask whether they want to renew. And most of them renewed. We started 5 years ago, so we don't know yet. But I would say what is very remarkable in the schools, I've never seen a network like that one, is the variety of schools that are in the network. So as I was saying, we have schools in refugee camps, we have regular public schools, we have private schools, we have international schools, and all of these schools work together. There is no sense of those are better, those are less, good, etc. They all work together with the same goal in mind, which is linguistically and culturally responsiveness. So that's really remarkable and encouraging. It's a wonderful community.
Well, thank you so much for explaining the initiative that you co-started. Now we're going to be changing speakers. So Marjorie, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi, everybody. My name is Marjorie Hewitt, and I was the head of what we call the head of the Department of ESL, English as a Second Language, at Glendale Secondary School in Hamilton, Ontario. I was the head for about 17 years, and I started teaching maybe about 30 some years ago. and I just retired in June, and which was a big decision, but it was time. And the last thing I did really was the conference for the Language Friendly School. That was the last big event. And yeah, that's me.
Well, congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
So when you were head of ESL at Glendale, how did you get to know Language Friendly Schools?
So, during the pandemic, we weren't having the same kind of opportunities to go to conferences and go to in-services. And, one of the few great things about the pandemic was that there were more offerings online of webinars and information sessions. And something that happened was that there's an association in Ontario called ERGO, that's ERGO, and it's an association of ESL administrators, actually, of principals and consultants, not teachers. It's a professional organization. So they started offering webinars for teachers, which was kind of something I hadn't known about. I don't think they did that before. And so in our system, we have someone who's the principal of ESL, and she sent out a list of all the different webinars. And one of them was the Language Friendly School, which I believe Emmanuelle was probably leading that webinar. And immediately upon seeing that title, I felt immediately drawn to it. It really, over a long career, there are maybe 2 or 3 times that happens where you see something and it really speaks to you. And the Language Friendly School spoke to me for lots of reasons, and from over my years of teaching. And so I really wanted to attend, but I wasn't able to attend. I had another meeting or something else going on, so I didn't attend, but I didn't forget about it. And I looked it up again. I went back in my emails and found the flyer, I guess it was, for the Language Friendly School webinar. And I found Emmanuelle's name and I emailed her and asked about it. And that opened up the whole world of Language Friendly School to me. And I researched it and looked at it a little bit, and I knew I wanted to do it right away. So Emmanuelle got me started with it. And that's the beginning of everything.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And once you got that interest peaked, what was your experience with building a language friendly school? Like, what did it involve? How did it look like? We also have some pictures in case you want to showcase them as well.
Sure. So, it was very exciting doing something new and bringing something new to the school, and something that I felt really reflected my personal philosophy around teaching and around interacting with the newcomer community. So that was exciting. And to find people who were interested in coming on board with it was extremely gratifying and humbling. And so basically what happened was I sent out an email to the staff, the whole staff, and just gave a quick overview of what it meant to be a language friendly school, and was anybody interested in meeting with me and talking about it and maybe pursuing it. And what happened is you sort of guess who the teachers are who might respond to that, and who, the teachers I expected to respond positively did. And and so we met at lunch, and there were about 5 or 6 of us sitting around a table at lunch. And it was really a powerhouse table of just really passionate teachers, student-centered teachers, and also teachers who themselves had been second language learners when they were English language learners when they were little. So they came from themselves. Their parents came from other countries, or they themselves were born in other countries. So they had a connection already and a love for language. This was a big focus in their lives. So that was really fun. And we sat around and we looked over the website and we talked about what it meant to be a language friendly school and what we were already doing, and then what we would want to maybe do next. And like there is a fair amount already of, celebration of multiculturalism and that kind of thing. And ESL certainly had a pretty large profile in the school. Mostly, positive response to newcomers. We used interpreters, we had settlement workers. So we were looking for what more we could do. And I just, said, do you want to move forward with this? And they said, heck yes, we want to. And so that's how it started. And, I spoke to the principal about it, and he was on board, and also had a lot of faith in the language friendly school team of teachers, these very experienced and committed teachers that we had, very dedicated. And so he was really big on supporting us as well as the language friendly school program. And so, yeah, we started on, and things were already happening in the school, even without the language friendly program, or language friendly network. So there were already other teachers who were interested in putting multilingual signs up around the school, recognizing already the strength of the school is its diversity. And so it was happening, there were ripples of it happening throughout the school. So we could celebrate that, and we could work on encouraging teachers to do more and to take another step with it. So sometimes there would be a little bit of, there was a little reluctance sometimes. Teachers can be very overworked, and there are always new things coming in from the board. Oh, now we have to talk about this, and now we have to start doing that. And sometimes teachers, can be reluctant, and there can be some eye rolling or whatever with the older teachers. And I was quite nervous about presenting language friendly schools. So, but I think that Emmanuelle and some of her students came during a PD day, professional development day, to speak to our staff, and the messaging was very positive. And because the teachers themselves, many of them were interested either in linguistics or they themselves were, multilingual, they took an interest in it, and it came out to be like a really positive message, and they embraced it. And I think part of it too was that myself and some of the other teachers who were leading it had positive relationships with the others in the school, and there was already a feeling of trust, and with the staff. And we weren't asking a lot, we were asking to recognize and celebrate what we were already doing, and for maybe people to take small steps. And some of the staff were kind of excited about the possibility of improving their classroom instruction by incorporating students' home languages. And so some of the teachers were frustrated about having students in their class who were still learning English, and they were hoping that this would support their instruction in the class, like if they could learn one or two strategies. So all in all, it was, at our school, like a very positive experience, I would say.
Thank you. And what about the reaction from the students, the parents, and the overall community?
The students were super excited to see their language being made visible in the classrooms, in the hallways, to hear music, because we pipe out music between classes as an indicator for students to move to class, to hear world music being piped out rather than, 80s American pop songs. To be able to use their language and to be experts about something was really empowering for them, because as newcomers, I think it's very easy to feel disempowered and you don't get to really show who you are because you're always operating in a language that is not the language you're most comfortable in. Your culture isn't being represented. And I think that there was a great sense of pride for a lot of the students. So one of the great things that happened was every few years, the schools are required to do a student voice survey in order to get the pulse of how students are feeling at school. Are they feeling safe? Are they feeling welcomed? And we had an administrative team who was very on board with the language-friendly school, and they really worked hard to make sure that the voices of our newcomer students were being represented in our whole school voice, student voice survey. So interpreters were brought in and specific questions were formed for those groups of students. And so they told their voice and their reflection was how fantastic it felt for them that they could express themselves, who they really are in terms of their language and their culture and their religion. They really loved that about the school, that they could express themselves fully. So, and they became very excited about, we created a team of, language ambassadors, and they would come to parent-teacher interviews and, other big events at the school, and they would wear their buttons that say that they could speak different languages, and they were very excited and very proud to be participating in that, as well as the conference as well. In terms of the parents, the parents may or may not have been aware that we had become a member of the Language Friendly School Network. I'm sure some of the students spoke to their parents about it because they were deeply involved in the idea of the Language Friendly School. But I like to think that the parents who came in, whether they were newcomer parents or whether they were parents the parents newcomer but living here a long time, I just feel that I was really interested as the ESL head in breaking down whatever barriers those parents might experience to come into the school. So, so having interpreters there for parents for meetings, big meetings and small meetings, settlement workers reaching out to parents, all of this, I feel that the parents were incredibly expressed a lot of gratitude that this was available for them and for their kids. So, and I got many, many messages from parents about that kind of feeling so welcomed in the school and feeling that they could access the school and the teachers despite any language barriers or cultural barriers. So that was great. There was a lot of embracing of the language friendly school at Glendale by the community, in terms of we had members of parliament and neighboring families and media very excited about this. And I remember when we became a language friendly school and we had a little ceremony and it was picked up by the media. I belonged to a choir, and I would go to the choir and there would be people from the community, the Hamilton area, and who were retired teachers, and they came up and they thanked me. They thanked me for having a language-friendly school at Glendale because they were so grateful and relieved to see a good news story happening about education in the media, because so many of the stories in the media can be negative. And so I think there was a lot of gratitude in the community that we had a really good news story and something that was inclusive and positive about what was happening in our school. So that was really gratifying as well.
Thank you so much. It sounds like Language Friendly Schools was a program that was really needed by this community. We're going to move on to our next speaker, who will give us a more local perspective. So, Jacqueline, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jacqueline. Right now, I'm a high school English as a second language teacher in Outremont. But I've taught in primary school and college level as well. So lots of different experiences. The school I'm at right now is a very diverse and urban typical school in Montreal. It's a French school, and it's a public school. So that's where I'm at right now.
And you attended the conference in May 2024. So, what was your first reactions to the Language Friendly School program?
Well, first, I want to say thank you for including me in that event. It was a wonderful event to have attended. It was inspiring and a wonderful place for me to learn from so many other inspiring teachers and pedagogues of all sorts. So it was first of all inspiring. Second of all, really put my teaching practices into further question. I'm always questioning what I'm doing and how I can do it better. And so this was a space for me to see what was working in other places and taking a look at best practices. I think some of the biggest impressions that I took away were how intimate and personal the organization actually felt, even though it is a multinational organization. You're all over the world in many schools. It still felt like a personal and intimate experience, and that the administrators were still so invested and involved in what was happening. So that was a really unique position to see. I work at a school that has an international baccalaureate program. We're a public school, but we offer the international baccalaureate middle years program. And so while it mirrors so many of the values of language-friendly schools, it is enormous and unwieldy and does not feel as intimate and well taken care of as language-friendly schools. So I think my big takeaway from that was that it's a supported organization and very inspiring. So those were my two big words I would take away.
Thank you for sharing those. Since you are familiar with the context of teaching in Quebec, in what ways do you think language-friendly schools are relevant to Quebec?
Well, I am an urban teacher. I teach in Montreal, and our demographics are so diverse in most of our public schools because of our laws. I don't know if all of the people in attendance here are familiar with all of the ways that Quebec students are permitted to attend school, but you need eligibility to be able to attend an English school. If you don't have the eligibility, you need to attend a French school, which is a little bit different. So I think that it lends itself nicely to this automatically diverse population that we have in the schools. We can really capitalize on students' home experiences and what they can bring to their peers at school as well. We also have in the urban center of Montreal a very diverse teaching staff. So most of my colleagues actually at the school I teach at right now come from other countries. They're not all originating from Quebec. So many of them have come from away. And then I have a daughter who has taught in a more rural setting, most recently in one of the regions in Quebec. And it was a totally different experience for her. It's very homogeneous. Most of the students at the school have very similar backgrounds. They're all Francophone, and there's not a lot of newcomers to the city or the little village that she was in. And so I think that the language-friendly schools would be equally relevant in that situation as well, because it would be bringing something different to the schools that are outside of the cities. So I think it has a place. I think it will be a challenge to bring it into place.
Do you have any ideas for how we could incorporate it into the Quebec system, or we could bring it to a Quebec school?
So I've been working very hard after the conference. I really do focus a lot on inclusivity in my classrooms anyways. It's something that I take to heart. And so this isn't a completely new idea for me. But after the conference last spring, I was able to really take a deep dive into looking at how I can bring it into my school a little more fully. And so we have a welcome class, or a classe d'accueil, in our school. In fact, we have at one point we had 8 last year. This year we have 5. And so because I also get to play the role of the International Baccalaureate coordinator at our school, I design a lot of the extracurricular programming that goes in as an overlay to regular schooling. And so our secondary 3 students have become not language ambassadors like at Marjorie's school, but they are in a partnership now with our classe d'accueil. And so they do a whole bunch of different activities with them, and they're exchanging on cultural levels and linguistic levels. So we've done activities where they do a speed dating activity, and some of the questions are about language. And so we have our students all mixed in groups, and everybody is rotating around. And it's called Amitié Express, and it's wonderful. And the kids walk away with new friends and new stories and new words from their new friends as well. So that is one way that we've brought it into our school. We also, through the partnership, do a rally in our neighborhood where we're in a very beautiful place in Montreal that is linguistically diverse. We're in a very Jewish neighborhood in Montreal. And so when you do the rally, you look around and there's writing not just in French and not just in English, but there is writing that the kids see in Hebrew on the storefronts. And so coming out and bringing the community into our school that surrounds us is another way that we do that. Our students do a shared viewing of a beautiful film that some of our old students put together and, in fact, won awards on. The film is called Bagage. It's a beautiful film, and it's stories of all newcomers to Quebec. And so we do a shared viewing, and then they talk about their whole experience within the auditorium after the viewing with our secondary 3 students. So they really understand what the experience is for the kids and how it can feel isolating, and they can feel so silenced and that lack of belonging. And so it gives a great space for them to understand the whole idea of belonging. I could keep going. I know we wanted to have a little bit of time at the end, and I'm looking at my clock, so I'm not quite sure how many ideas you want me to talk about in our school, but that's some of them that have worked very well in our school.
Well, thank you so much for those wonderful ideas. And thank you to all of our guest speakers again for sharing their perspectives. We'll now open the floor to more questions. So maybe we can go into more ideas, or maybe we have other questions from our viewers that they would like to go into.
Can I say something before the question comes? One of the things I learned working with schools and teachers is that teachers are super humble. And Marjorie is surely one of them. So she started by saying that she's retired, but actually she's now a language-friendly ambassador. doing a lot of dissemination work for us and support work for the schools. So we are super, super happy with Marjorie. And the organization of the conference was very much the work of Marjorie and her team. So I really want to thank her officially that way.
So we had a question from a raised hand. I don't know if the person would like to share.
Yes. Are you referring to me? Yes? Okay. I just wanted to know from the teachers that have experienced this in their schools, have you seen, I teach in a Quebec school. I was wondering if you saw the marks, how were the marks of these allophone students in schools where this program was implemented? Did you see a rise in their marks? Did it have an impact? Because the fear in my school from my colleagues is when we allow this openness, the marks of the students will go down. They'll be mixed up. They'll be stuck to their language and not embrace the French language, and they have this fear. So they say your mother tongue, you leave it at home, and in school it's just French. They have a hard time embracing the other language because of this fear that the marks, their academics will be impacted. So I was just wondering if any teacher has seen a progress in these students when this program was implemented. Thank you.
I would just say that, you know, in my experience, so which would be 2 years as a language friendly school, that we did not like conduct any kind of research to see whether or not students' marks improved. And I think we would need a longer term study with a bigger population of students to have some hard data on that. But I think observationally, I would say that what I saw in the classroom was greater engagement, not just with the well, also like with the instruction of the class. So during instructional time and during the activities, the students were highly engaged when it was an opportunity to access their language and their culture, or it was something culturally relevant to them. So certainly there was an improved engagement piece, and I also felt that students were able to access learning outside the ESL class. So say in a cooking class or a technology class or a science class, because they were allowed to say the teacher would encourage, say, pre-teaching some vocabulary where they would have the word in English and then they would have the word in multiple languages. I mean, I would think that it supported their language learning and supported then after that, like supported understanding the content and learning the content of the course material. And I would suspect that that would result in improved marks, but we didn't collect any hard data on that, but maybe the other two speakers would have more information on that.
Jacqueline, do you want to say something or should I?
Well, similar to Marjorie, we haven't conducted any specific research, and mine is a very micro look at what happens. But what I do see happening is we have the International Baccalaureate program, and many of the students who participate in the Accueil program join the stream of International Baccalaureate students because they feel it is more their place in the school, and they are feeling more welcomed perhaps in that setting and very comfortable there. I think that emphasis on belonging is huge, and the value that is placed on their multicultural backgrounds. I think it's great. So I can only speak to what I see happening within our little school setting, but that participation in a more demanding program in our school is perhaps a little bit of evidence that would hint at strong academics.
I think I would add that, using language-friendly strategies in the classroom, it makes me think a lot about Professor Jim Cummins and his research on identity texts, where students who are at the beginning end of learning English, that they are making dual language, like working in dual language texts, creating dual language texts. And I would assume, Emmanuelle, that he would have data to back up the how effective using identity texts in the classroom is in terms of academic achievement. Do you have any information on that?
Yes, so there are tons of research, and Sunny could testify of it too, that show that linguistically and culturally embedded pedagogy improve the academic results of students. With regards to the language-friendly schools specifically, and in the hardcore research, because I think that's what you are looking for, there was a research conducted by the University of Amsterdam with one of our schools in the Netherlands, and which showed that the vocabulary of the students in Dutch improved significantly. So it was highly positive. So that's one of the researches that has been conducted in one of our language-friendly schools. The reason why we haven't yet is that, first of all, it's quite recent. We started 5 years ago, and that's the first thing. The second thing is that the language friendliness is implemented differently depending on the school plan. So, for instance, one school can say, oh, this year we want to work on STEM. And so they are going to put all of their efforts on language friendliness in STEM subjects. So for that school, STEM is going to be the goal. For another school, they are going to say, no, for us, it's literacy. Okay, they are going to work on the literacy. For another school, it's going to be, no, we want actually to include our communities better, meaning parents. And then they are going to work on the socio-emotional aspect of it. And so it's different per school. And so, and we are very much respecting what the school themselves define as their own goals for their communities. But we want to come up with more significant results to be able to talk about the impact. And that's the reason why at the moment we are preparing a proposal for a grant with, in particular, Professor Lowe, and to get together with a group of researchers in Canada to see how we can come up with more objective impact of this pedagogy, because this hasn't happened yet at a more pan-Canadian level. So there are tons of research, again, that show that it works, but altogether, it would be interesting to come as a group and to be able to show how. Maybe you want to add something, Sunny.
Well, I'm so happy to hear what the three speakers have said today, and I think the question asked is a very common concern here, I think, in Quebec, and because of the language policy, and I think people are very protective and also feeling very insecure about the language. And yet, I think research has been telling us that when we invite students' identity, when they feel belong, when they can use all their knowledge and resources to learn, they actually can learn very well, and they actually enjoy learning. The experience I had from that conference and seeing the students in Glendale and how they they take the lead in welcoming the guests and be proud of who they are and use their own languages in their writing, in trying to learn other subject areas. It was really beautiful. I actually have a question for the three of you. Jacqueline, thank you so much for sharing what you have done after the conference. It's amazing what you have done in such a short time. And I know that it's not easy at all here in Quebec, because you mentioned, okay, many of the teachers are multilingual themselves, but I think the overall, the policy, people feel that pressure to not talk about this as what I think Emmanuelle said earlier. Teachers might do it, but then they will close the door and don't let other people know about it. And so you have been doing it in your own classroom. And do you think that this can be like you can start something bigger and begin to see other teachers joining you? I think Marjorie mentioned something that I learned about today, and that is um, even in your school, it's at the beginning it's not easy, and how how courageous you are to start with, just to get some allies first, to get the support, and then you introduce it to the teachers, to the principal, which is amazing. So yeah, I wonder how we can get to other teachers and then the administrators as well.
Well, maybe if I can take 2 minutes to answer.
Yeah.
So the Accueil coordinator last year has actually left the school and gone to another school within our board or our service center. And she took the program of the pairing or the partenariat with her.
Mhm.
And so it's now in 2 schools. And so I
Oh.
think there is this little bit of multiplying effect. Hopefully it will happen. So it's in 2 places, this project, and it is publicized, and so we can often apply for cultural grants, and we have different awards in Quebec. And so last year, our project of partenariat was nominated for one of the
Oh.
awards. So it is, so things are, we didn't win anything, but things are being spoken about and shared. And so I think perhaps the conversation is beginning.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you.
And there is a very interesting note of someone who I believe left because they had to go probably. And they say that they were in a classe d'accueil and that they are going to be a teacher themselves and will keep that in mind. And so we should also keep in mind that our students who are newcomers are now becoming teachers and maybe more open to that if we disseminate the message, because they understand. Apparently, this teacher, this of a future teacher and former student, felt that they had missed on something when listening to us. And that's, I think it's a very, very powerful comment and an encouragement for us to continue. And Sunny, thank you very much for saying that they are very courageous because it's true. What we see in these schools that join the network is that the language persons, so the people who reach out to us, are usually leaders in the sense that they take on themselves to go to the next step. And sometimes they come with the principal, and then after the meeting, the principal says no. And, that happens too. And that's hard. So it's really hard. And then they work on it. And sometimes we have schools who reached out to us 2 years before, then we don't hear anything. And then after 2 years, they come and they say, we are ready now. This is so impressive. The process is different for every school because each community is different, each individual is different, each principal is different, and each of them have their own experience and understanding of it. But it is so important for teachers like Jacqueline to find allies, like Marjorie did. Marjorie said, I went to this teacher, I knew they were going to be on board. And then she built on that, which is a very smart strategy. And honestly, with the language training school, we do the same. We do the same. We build on schools that are ready for it and that want to go for it. And then with them, we build up an expertise that is going to, like you said, be communicated to the next ones because they become the expert. They are the expert that are going to disseminate. And I'm so grateful that you organized that today with Jacqueline and Marjorie, who are actually the best speakers to talk about it. But it's true what you said, Jacqueline, that the conference, we were welcomed by, or Sunny, by, I believe, 25 newcomer students, right? Who were doing all kinds of tasks. So one was a journalist even, made a report of the conference with a film and took their role very seriously. They were also paid for it and played an amazing role in the organization of the conference, but also in the atmosphere. We were welcomed by the students. We could feel that the school, they considered the school like a place they belong to. And this is the secret. If students feel like their school are the place where they belong to, they are going to invest in their in their study, and if they invest time and effort in their study, they are going to thrive, right? There is no doubt about that. We don't need quantitative research or whatever, we know it.
I think we're reaching towards the end. I don't know if anyone had any other questions. No, I'll give a final big thank you to all of our speakers. You guys all brought really interesting points, and hopefully this meeting will inspire the future teachers or the teachers in the room to find language-friendly ways to introduce to their schools. Again, so this webinar has been recorded. It's going to be available on the For Real website. I can leave that in the chat. And for those that would be interested in keeping up with these webinars, I'll invite them to leave their emails in the chat as well. So that way we can keep you on our email list and keep you updated whenever we have our next webinars. We have one coming up in December. So just for those who might not be aware, we alternate every month between the Wednesday and the Thursday. So we look forward to seeing you guys again. And for one last time, a very big thank you to our speakers. It was a very enriching conversation. Thank you so much for today.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Merci, thank you.
Before everyone leaves,